For the record, Oregon head coach Chip Kelly can recite most of Rocky Top because then again, for the past week, that's all that was blaring at practices up in Eugene, Oregon to get the Young Ducks set to go on the road to take on the Tennessee Volunteers in Neyland Stadium. But for the Ducks, it's all about the end result, and that usually dominant, handing Tennessee the most lopsided, worst loss in the history of Neyland Stadium, and in the process, making the Oregon offense averaging a point per minute. Again, Chip Kelly just looking at that bottom line.
Come get some! Johnny! One-on-ones! One-on-ones! Come get some! Let's get.
Our offense is based upon getting the ball in our playmakers' hands, and they're two of the best in the country. It's an interesting dilemma for a coach trying to get the ball in two really special players' hands.
You're just exposing your chest and saying, please impale me. I'm a good friend. I want you to knock me out.
The biggest thing a quarterback's got to worry about in this offense is he doesn't have to make things happen. He has to let it happen. But when his number's called upon, he's got to make the play.
Rocky Top, Tennessee.
We're still a work in progress. You know, our quarterback will have his second start against Tennessee. He did a nice job in the first game on managing what we wanted him to do. We can always get better, and that's what we're striving for.
All the fans of the Oregon Ducks certainly like the production they have right now in the program, and for that, you think this man right here, Coach Mike Bellotti, finding Coach Kelly with New Hampshire, was an offensive coordinator. You bring him in as your head coach in waiting. I've heard so many stories about the way Coach Kelly prepares this team, from the cameras on the helmets to trainers wearing giant outlines of players so quarterbacks can get used to throwing through lanes. Where does this all come from with Coach Kelly?
That's the 7-on-7. We actually have guys with things built on, so he's got to throw through windows instead of throwing over the top, simulate a pass rush during 7-on-7. You know, he's a student of the game. He's a football junkie, and I think that's really the most amazing thing. He lives, eats, sleeps, drinks football. I mean, he probably knows the words to Rocky Top now going through his mind. One of the things, though, I want to talk about, the reason scoring a point a minute is not just their offense, but they've got 3 special team scores, a couple of defensive scores, so that certainly helps those stats. Yeah, it is. And they go fast. They're going to get more plays than the average team.
And I think it helps having dynamic playmakers. That's never bad to have either. There's your pick 6 right there. And you talked about the first 2 punt returns for a touchdown.
Ferris, that young man has 3 touchdowns already. 2 punt returns the first game, and that one right there.
He's a backup, isn't he?
He's a backup. He doesn't start anywhere now.
He didn't even start, and he's scoring touchdowns.
Kenyon Barnes is a starter. Give him the backup again, and he took it last week. Now, and LaMichael James isn't bad either. When you say, okay, should I give it to LaMichael or Kenyon? I'm going to tell you what, that's not a tough decision.
I spoke to Chip Kelly this past offseason. The one thing he was stressing to me about his football team was depth. And even after Jeremiah Mazzoli was kicked out of school, there were 17 starters coming back, but he wasn't focusing on that. He was talking about the guys behind the guys that we hadn't yet heard of. Michael James suspended in week 1. Kenyon Barnes shows up, 5 touchdowns in the first half of that game on their way to scoring 72 points and 720 yards of total offense. Whether it's Jeff Mail in the receiving game, whether it's David Paulson, who's all of a sudden established himself at wide receiver as well. This is a very dynamic offense, and he was warning me, don't sleep on quarterback Darren Thomas. He's a much better thrower than everybody gives him credit for, and I love when Chip Kelly talks about the quarterback being the point guard in this style of offense. The job, again, you just heard him there. Distributing the football into your playmakers' hands, making the right decisions, whether it's in the zone read game, in the running game, all those swing passes they throw, all those slip screens to the wide receivers, those are all extensions of the running game. It allows those players to get the ball in space on the perimeter of the football field, and you see how explosive it can be.
What I think the most important element of this offense is dictating tempo. Yeah. Chip Kelly and this Oregon offense, they're never going to allow the opposition to dictate the style in which the game is going to be played. So, you know, it's almost like Gus Malzahn at Auburn. We're going to get as many plays in as we can, as many scoring opportunities. We're going to take our best player, find your worst player, and get him in space and get him the ball. ball. And they're not going to take a bunch of vertical shots downfield with Darren Thomas. Not saying that he can't. He's very similar to what we're seeing out of Denard Robinson, a terrific athlete that throws the ball better than people give him credit for.
And what it does is it forces defenses out of what they're comfortable doing. You know, they want to say in a certain package, they want to do things. If you can't substitute, you're not in condition, you can't do those things, you can't get after Oregon like you want to. Tennessee had the game in hand, but we just kept waiting. Everybody was watching to say,
they're not no huddle, they're hyper. That's the thing.
That's the impressive thing to me about Oregon is more the big picture. I mean, we're talking, first of all, last year, LeGarrette Blount is out, somebody else steps in. Jeremiah Masoli comes out, new quarterback steps in. Yeah. Take that back and extrapolate that back. Coach Bellotti leaves, new coach steps in. Rich Brooks leaves, Mike Bellotti steps in. This has become a self-sustaining program at a place most people didn't think they could do.
They reload.
And as long as they keep winning, I think folks in Eugene certainly happy with that. Not too happy, though, not at Neyland Stadium, but around the rest of the SEC. A lot to look forward to, especially in the SEC West, when you take a look at the Auburn Tigers. Year number 2 for their South Carolina, toting the rock 37 times. And welcome back, LaMichael James, Oregon, moving into the front-runner spot as far as favorites in the Pac-10 after absolutely thumping the Tennessee Volunteers after a lightning delay in Knoxville. And then the AC UMass coming up next, followed by Bowling Green, perhaps an opportunity for someone else not named Denard Robinson to really get that offense clicking as it certainly has been. This is what we have in the recent AP poll. Alabama, Ohio State, they are your clear-cut number 1 and number 2. Boise State stays at number 3, but they lose 7 first-place votes that they had the previous week following that win against Virginia Tech. And all the talk, what does it mean with Virginia Tech losing to James Madison from the FCS? We'll get into that later in the show. Very interesting to see a team like TCU, number 4 overall. They have a big matchup coming up against the Baylor.